Now, for more on China's cross-border commerce, I spoke with Joel Backaler. He's managing director at Frontier Strategy Group. He's also the author of the book, China Goes West, Everything You Need to Know About Chinese Companies Going Global.
Well, it's growing so quickly because it's starting from a fairly low base. This is a trend that's been in place now for just a few years, ever since the implementation of the initial kind of special economic zones that were put in place. But what we've seen is it's grown extremely fast, and there's a variety of players. So when we talk about cross-border e-commerce, on one end of the spectrum, we're talking about companies like Alibaba. They operate a platform called Tmall Global. Then JD, Jingdong, they have a platform called JD Worldwide. But then in the middle, there's a series of niche firms that you might not have heard of. These are companies like Waimato and Mitao. These are exclusively focused on cross-border e-commerce, and they're the ones that have been operating probably for the shortest, but also growing the fastest. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have individual agents and buyers overseas, often called Daigou. These are people that are purchasing goods on behalf of other individuals in China and then bringing them back to the market. So it's a diverse group of players. There's a lot of incentives from the government to want to essentially facilitate cross-border e-commerce. So it's a trend that's been growing extremely fast. And it's kind of like, I'd say, the Wild West at this point.
So would you say that more regulation, we've also seen that China has added this tax increase to really try and boost consumption at home. Do you think these taxes go far enough? Is that enough to make Chinese consumers shop in the mainland more?
I don't think so, because when it comes to cross-border e-commerce, there's two main concerns that shoppers have. Number one, they want goods at affordable prices. So as long as the goods are still going to be cheaper overseas in other markets, they're going to want to either go there themselves through their travels or hire agents or use these platforms to get them. But even more importantly is authenticity. And when it comes to authenticity, it's not just about making sure that you have, the right luxury bag from Michael Kors or Coach, but even more importantly, it's about making sure that the products, the health and beauty products that you buy for yourself and your family are authentic. So if we look at one major product segment, kind of dairy formula, this is a product that Chinese consumers go out of their way to purchase from overseas because there have been a variety of scandals, and they can't trust the domestic industry.
Now, in terms of some of the countries and the companies that are really reaping the benefits from this search for cross-border shopping, where would you say that the Chinese shoppers tend to spend the bulk of their money?
Yeah, well, Chinese shoppers buy kind of the best from around the world. So if you're looking at markets, there's a lot of activity in the United States, in Europe, Australia, South Korea, Japan, and they're going to these markets for a variety of different goods. So in the US, on one hand, they may be purchasing Coach bags, but they also might be purchasing almonds from Costco's flagship store on Alibaba. At the same time, they may be going to Korea for the latest cosmetics and personal care products. So they're going to the markets where they kind of have reputations for certain companies and goods so they can get the brands they want at a price that's more reasonable than in China, where sometimes it can just be much more expensive. And again, there's always concerns about product quality when you're not going through kind of these direct channels.
Now, in terms of pricing and quality, you have companies like Chanel who decided to lower their prices in the mainland so that they could stay competitive. But then you also have other companies that decided to build brick and mortar stores, and they really didn't see a good flow of business. So what is the best strategy here?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a veteran China hand to be somebody that goes to China and recognizes that these luxury malls are not filled and that Chinese consumers are not going into Tiffany's and Coach and these major outlets and buying goods there. The reason behind that is just, number one, they tend to be much more expensive. Number two, if they have the money to shop and buy those goods, they're most likely going to be traveling themselves to a market as close as Hong Kong, if not to Europe, where they could purchase the real thing and get better service. I mean, if you're an international Chinese shopper, you can get Chinese language service in some of the top boutiques around the world because it's recognized now that the China consumer isn't just in China, it's a global consumer. And as Chinese consumers shop in the US, in Europe, and across Asia, there's more and more services that are really meant to serve their needs. And that's why you'll see a lot of the companies that have been successful are ones that are opening up kind of flagship stores in China in key cities to build their reputation, build their brand, but then use e-commerce as their primary channel to reach Chinese consumers. And this goes to another point, which is China is a very big place, so they're not going to be able to get as many brick and mortar stores as they'd ideally like. So by encouraging consumers to go to the e-commerce channel, they open up a greater market opportunity.